The city was wrapped in a biting cold as William, a 92-year-old man, slowly made his way through the streets lit by gleaming storefronts. His steps were sluggish, his hands trembled slightly inside the worn-out coat he had been wearing for years. He was exhausted. After a long train ride, he had been robbed at the station. They took his wallet, his documents, even his small suitcase filled with family memories. The world around him seemed to turn its back on him. No one looked, no one cared. But he had a destination, his grandson's jewelry store, the very same store that had once been his pride, his life. Liam, his beloved grandson, was now the owner, a successful businessman, and William knew he could count on him. Clinging to that certainty, the old man crossed the street with difficulty, his eyes fixed on the grand storefront. The golden lettering shone under the nightlights, and through the gleaming glass, he could see well-dressed customers and busy employees. As he pushed the door open, a small bell chimed softly, but no one even glanced his way. William took a deep breath and stepped inside, feeling the welcoming warmth of the store in stark contrast to the freezing cold outside. But before he could say a word, a blonde, well-dressed employee, Jack, gave him a look of pure disdain, furrowing his brows as if some unwanted presence had just tainted that luxurious space. "Sir, can you leave?" Jack's voice was sharp, like he was speaking to some pesky beggar. William stopped, taken aback. "My grandson, Liam, is he here?" His voice, weak from exhaustion, came out as a whisper, heavy with hope. Jack let out a short, mocking laugh. "Your grandson? Oh, sure. And I'm the President of the United States." William blinked, trying to process it. "Please, I just need to see him. He owns this store. I'm his grandfather." Jack crossed his arms, glancing at the receptionist Charlotte, who was typing away on her computer, barely paying attention. She lifted her gaze, wrinkling her nose at the sight of the old man's tattered clothes and tired face. "Jack, get this old man out of here." William took a step back. "I don't mean to bother anyone. I just need to talk to him. I had trouble at the station. I was robbed and—" Charlotte rolled her eyes, already fed up. "Listen up, Grandpa. If you think you can walk in here and pretend to be the boss's relative just to get money, you've got another thing coming." "What?" William's eyes widened. They didn't believe him. Jack clicked his tongue, already out of patience. "Levi!" From the back of the store, a tall, broad-shouldered man stepped forward. Levi, the security guard, wore a spotless suit and carried himself like a soldier. He looked at William with an empty stare, as if he wasn't looking at a human being, just some nuisance. "Get this man out of here," Jack ordered. Levi stepped closer, menacing. William felt his stomach drop. "No, please. I just need to make a call. I can prove who I am. I'm William, the founder of this store." "The founder?" Jack burst out laughing, placing a hand on his chest like he had just heard the most ridiculous joke of the year. "Oh, sure, so you're William. And what if I told you I'm the heir to the King of England? How about that?" Charlotte laughed along with him, and even some customers started throwing amused glances their way. William felt a tightness in his chest. How had they forgotten him so easily? "Call Liam, please," the old man begged, his trembling voice almost swallowed by the store's chatter. But Levi grabbed his arm without an ounce of kindness. "Come on, we don't have time for scammers." William flinched at the strength of his grip. He tried to pull away, but his frail hands didn't have the strength they once did. "No, don't do this," he pleaded. Charlotte let out an irritated sigh. "Since he won't leave, let's just settle this once and for all." She picked up the phone and dialed 3 numbers. "Police, we've got a bum in here causing trouble." "Yeah, an old guy, pretending to be the owner of the store. Can you come get him?" "Thanks." A cold shiver ran down William's spine. "This can't be happening," he murmured. But it was, and no one seemed to care. The jewelry store doors swung open suddenly, letting in an icy gust of wind that cut through the warm air inside. William was shoved roughly, his worn-out shoes scraping against the marble floor. His frail, exhausted body couldn't take the impact, and he stumbled forward, thrown outside like some unwanted burden. The customers inside paused their shopping to watch the scene unfold, as if it were some shameful spectacle they had every right to witness. A few well-dressed women covered their mouths, pretending to be shocked, while others whispered among themselves, exchanging knowing looks and muffled laughs. "What on earth is this?" scoffed a woman in a fur coat, eyeing William like he was some filthy insect crawling on the pristine sidewalk. "They should lock up these old beggars. Always making up stories to squeeze money out of people," muttered an older man in a flawless suit. Jack stepped out of the store with a smug grin, his hands tucked casually into the pockets of his tailor-made suit. "Hope you learned your lesson, old man." Jack crossed his arms and tilted his head, his voice dripping with disdain. I'm Liam's grandfather." The customers, who had been watching with amusement, now had their phones out, recording. Some cracked jokes, others snapped pictures of the old man lying on the ground. A deep sense of despair crashed over William. He couldn't believe this was happening, that no one recognized his face, his story, his legacy. He lifted his head, eyes locking onto the luxurious storefront, the golden lettering gleaming under the streetlights. This was his store. He built this empire with his own hands. And now, they were throwing him out like some worthless nobody. "Liam!" he shouted, clinging to his last shred of hope. But no one answered. Impatient, Levi shoved him hard. William's body hit the freezing pavement, his knees slamming against the concrete, his palms scraping against the rough asphalt. Pain shot through him like an electric shock. Jack smirked. "Bet you'll drop the act now, huh, Grandpa?" Charlotte chuckled, tossing her hair back. "Look at him. What a disgrace." The sound of sirens began to echo in the distance. William tried to get up, but his legs gave out. His body was too weak, too tired. When the police cars pulled up, 2 officers stepped out quickly, hands resting on their holstered guns, their faces unreadable. "This the problem?" one of them asked, looking at Levi. "Yes, sir," Levi answered without the slightest hesitation. He tried to break into the store, pretending to be the owner's relative, caused a scene. The officers exchanged a glance, not even questioning it. One of them grabbed William's arm roughly. "Get up, and no, William's voice cracked. "I said get up." The old man tried to resist, tried to brace himself against the ground, but his bones no longer had the strength they once did. He was powerless. The crowd watched with cruel fascination, and then, without warning, one of the officers yanked his arm sharply. William let out a muffled cry of pain. "Liam!" he screamed, his final desperate plea, and then he was silenced. Crushed by injustice, by the cold indifference of the very world he helped build. The night stretched over the city, and the wailing siren of the police car echoed between the towering buildings. The crowd remained, some watching with fascination, others recording on their phones as if this were just another episode of public humiliation. William, weak and humiliated, was held tightly by the officers, his arms already bruised by the iron grip of authority that didn't care about his age. His eyes pleaded for mercy, but no one seemed to care. Then a sleek black luxury car pulled up in front of the jewelry store. The door swung open quickly, and a tall man in a perfectly tailored suit stepped out in a hurry. His expensive shoes hit the pavement hard, his sharp gaze instantly locking onto the scene, his grandfather being treated like a criminal. Liam, the heir to the jewelry empire, didn't understand at first, but something felt wrong, brutally wrong. He took 2 steps forward, his eyes scanning everything at lightning speed. His grandfather on the ground, the cops restraining him, the crowd mocking, the employees watching, the receptionist barely holding back laughter. What the hell is going on here? His voice cut through the thick silence like a whip cracking in the cold night air. Charlotte's face drained of color. Jack straightened his posture, the smug grin vanishing from his lips as if ripped away by force. Levy, the security guard, still had a grip on William, but now seemed to hesitate. The officers turned to Liam, and one of them adjusted his belt before asking, "Are you the owner of this store?" "Yes." Liam stepped forward. "Now someone tell me, what the hell are you doing to my grandfather?" The air froze. Silence. Absolute silence. Charlotte stood still. Jack stammered something unintelligible. Levi, acting on pure instinct, immediately let go of William's arm, as if it had caught fire. The once cruel, mocking crowd now looked uneasy. Some exchanged glances, sensing just how badly this situation had turned. The nervous chuckles vanished into the icy night air. The cops hesitated, exchanging uncertain looks. He was causing a disturbance at the store entrance. One of them finally muttered in defense. Liam stared at his grandfather, and his chest tightened at the sight. The exhausted face, the scraped knees, the trembling hands. "Grandpa!" William lifted his weary, tear-filled eyes. His voice barely made it through the air, cracked and fragile. "Liam, I tried to talk to you, but they..." A wave of pure rage crashed over Liam. His eyes burned with fury as he turned lightning fast to Jack, Charlotte, and Levi. "You did this to my grandfather." Jack opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He swallowed hard, his panicked gaze flicking to Charlotte, whose face was now burning red with shame. Jack struggled to compose himself, forcing an awkward smile. "Mr. Liam, you see, we were just protecting the store. You have to understand, we had no way of knowing this man, that he was your—" His voice crumbled before he could finish. Liam took another step forward, and Jack instinctively stepped back like a cornered rat. "My grandfather. You had no way of knowing he was my grandfather?" Charlotte swallowed hard, suddenly feeling like the air around her had thinned. "He walked in looking like a beggar, Liam. You can see that for yourself. How were we supposed to know he was someone important?" "Someone important?" Liam let out a laugh, but it was cold, bitter, dripping with disgust. He turned to the crowd, his eyes blazing. "Did you hear that?" He didn't look important. Then he pointed at William, still on his knees, fragile, hurt, his clothes covered in dust, his hands trembling. "So that's how it works, huh?" Liam's voice rose, making sure everyone heard him. "If a man walks in well-dressed, you serve him with a smile. But if he's tired, worn out, dressed in old clothes, you throw him out like a stray dog?" Charlotte shot Jack a desperate look, silently begging for a way out, but he had no answer. "I swear, Mr. Liam, we were just following company protocol," Jack blurted, his voice frantic. Liam gave him a cold, cutting smile. "Company protocol?" Then, without another word, he crouched down and helped William to his feet, holding his grandfather against his own chest. His eyes were red, glistening with unshed tears, and his jaw clenched as he fought the anger and guilt raging inside him. And then, in that thick, suffocating silence, William's frail but weighted voice broke through. "I founded this store." The words crashed like thunder. Charlotte froze, her breath caught in her throat. Jack looked like he'd just taken a punch to the chest. Levi felt his knees go weak. The crowd collectively held its breath. "What?" Charlotte's voice was barely a whisper, fragile, broken. "That's right." William lifted his gaze, his expression a painful mix of sadness and disbelief. "I built this store with my own hands, with sweat, with sleepless nights, and now I'm treated like a beggar." The impact was devastating. The mocking laughter died out completely. The crowd that had been so amused now stood in stunned silence, shame written all over their faces. Liam closed his eyes for a moment, letting the guilt crush him. He would never forgive himself for not being here sooner. But now, there would be consequences, and no one, absolutely no one, was ready for what was coming next. The air was still thick with silence, suffocating and heavy. Embarrassment hung over everyone, but Liam didn't feel even a shred of sympathy. He stepped away from his grandfather and moved forward, his gaze sharp, burning with barely contained fury. His heart pounded, not with hesitation, but with pure outrage. One by one, his eyes swept over the employees, disgust growing with every second. Jack, the smug salesman, was still trying to keep up his act, but his mask was crumbling. Charlotte, the receptionist, pressed her lips together, visibly shaking. Levi, the security guard, avoided Liam's gaze, but it was too late for regrets. And then Liam dropped the hammer. "You're all fired!" The words hit like dynamite. Jack swallowed hard, the arrogance vanishing from his face. "What? Liam, wait!" He stepped forward, but Liam shot up a hand, cutting him off. "Don't say my name!" His voice was a whip crack. "You think you can justify this? You humiliated my grandfather. You turned him into a spectacle for these people." Jack shook his head desperately. "It was a mistake. We didn't know, I swear. If we had any idea he was your grandfather, we never would have done this." That excuse only made Liam's rage flare hotter. He stepped even closer, his face just inches from Jack's. "You just proved exactly what kind of person you are, Jack. This isn't about who he was. It's about how you treat people." Jack had nothing left to say. Charlotte felt panic claw at her chest. "Liam, please. I was just following orders. I didn't know." Liam shot her a look of pure disgust. "You laughed at him. You mocked him. You called the cops to drag him out of here like a criminal." His voice shook with rage. "And now you want my forgiveness? No. I don't need people like you here." Charlotte crumbled. "Please, Liam. I need this job. Don't do this to me." Liam let out a cold, sharp laugh. You know who else needed that same compassion? A 92-year-old man who just wanted to see his grandson. Charlotte opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Levi tried to slip away quietly, but Liam caught him. "And you?" Levi froze mid-step, sweat beading on his forehead. Mr. Liam, listen. I was just doing my job." Liam narrowed his eyes. Your job Your job is to throw an old man out, knock him to the ground and humiliate him. Your job is to be a complete piece of garbage? No, sir. Levi raised his hands, panic creeping into his voice. Please, I have a family. I have bills to pay. Liam stepped even closer, his gaze sharp as steel. Then go provide for your family somewhere else. You'll never set foot in here again. Levi went pale, frozen in place, before finally dropping his head in defeat. But Liam wasn't done yet. He turned to the crowd, the customers who had stood there watching it all like some cheap sideshow. He took a deep breath and dropped the final bomb. As of today, this store is being restructured, and none of you will be a part of it. The impact was immediate. The crowd stood in stunned silence, and then the police escorted the former employees out. Their downfall was swift, merciless, deserved. The crowd remained, slack-jawed, unable to process what had just happened. The employees had been ripped from their positions like weeds, their faces twisted in shock and despair as they were led out by the cops. Jack's arrogance had completely vanished. Charlotte cried silently. Levi trembled, knowing he'd never work in this business again. Inside the jewelry store, the silence was heavy, thick as lead. The shining display cases still gleamed, as if mocking the scene that had just unfolded. But now, this cold, elitist place would never be the same. Liam took a deep breath. His eyes were still red, his rage still boiling beneath the surface, but something stronger had started to take root inside him. Determination. He turned to William, who watched him with teary eyes. "Grandpa." Liam stepped closer, gently taking the old man's wrinkled hands in his. "Forgive me. I wasn't here when you needed me most. I let you down." William gave him a weak smile, but there was a glimmer of pride in his gaze. "You got here just in time, kid." His voice was frail, but it carried an unshakable strength. "And now, what are you going to do?" Liam let out a deep sigh, like he was finally shaking off a massive weight. Then he turned to everyone and made the announcement that would change that place forever. "This jewelry store is going back to the hands of the man who actually built it." The impact of those words hit like an earthquake. The few customers still lingering exchanged shocked glances. The employees who hadn't been fired held their breath. There was no doubt. The news would spread through the city in a matter of minutes. Charlotte was still standing by the door, her face streaked with tears. "You can't be serious," she whispered, her voice thick with desperation. Liam didn't even look at her. Instead, he turned to William and knelt before him, like a grandson, kneeling before a king who had been exiled for far too long. "Grandpa, this store is yours. It always was. You worked for it, you fought for it, and now I want you to take your place back." William's eyes widened. "Me? Liam, my time has passed. You're the heir. I'm just an old man." Liam gripped his hands tighter. "No, you're a founder, a creator, the real owner. And me, I'll just carry on your legacy, but I'll do it the right way." William looked around. For the first time in years, he felt like he was home, not as a beggar, not as someone disposable, but as the true master of the empire he built. The crowd didn't know what to say, but Liam wasn't done yet. He stood up, his gaze sweeping the room, his words carrying a force no one could ignore. "One more thing." The silence grew even heavier. "This jewelry store won't just be a business anymore. It won't be a place that sells luxury while treating people like objects." He looked back at his grandfather. "This place will be a refuge for those the world has forgotten." People held their breath. From this day forward, no elderly person will be turned away here. No one will be judged by their clothes, their status, or their appearance. I will turn this store into a place where those cast aside by society will find purpose. Because I refuse to let what happened to my grandfather happen to anyone else. William tried to hold back his emotions, but he couldn't. His eyes filled with silent tears, and his wrinkled hand clutched his grandson's arm. And finally, the crowd understood the weight of this moment. Liam wasn't just firing employees. He was erasing a legacy of cruelty and rewriting a future of justice. Those who had mocked William now lowered their heads in shame. Those who had ignored him now questioned their own character. And in that moment, William's empire was reborn, and it would never be the same again.